So number one, because so many people talk about how their schedule gets away from them. It's a lot about time management. We want to be talking about and thinking about what our version of ourselves would be doing when we say like, hey, what is our millionaire version of ourselves looking like? What part of our business changes? What part of our actions change? So first thing I want to talk about is the amount of hours that we all work. And the first thing I'd like to mention is most of us don't work the amount of hours that are actually required in order to make $1 million a year. In the real estate business, if you, especially when you don't have a team, which we'll talk about other aspects in a little while in the video, if you don't have a team, you are the team. So if you aren't working, that means you're not earning money, right? So a lot of us are only working maybe 40 hours a week. Like if you actually do the math, some of us might even be working less than 40 hours a week. And most of the time, especially if you're only a few years into your career, you're 20 or 30 or 40 years into your career and you have this huge database and all these connections, and 1 million people calling you a year, then obviously you're going to probably be in a different place financially where you can probably work 20 or 30 hours a week and make a couple $1 million. A lot of us in the beginning stages of our business, that is an absolute falsehood. Keep in mind that I need you to think about the millionaire version of you, how many hours a week that you think you're going to need to work. Let me just break it down for you. You're probably going to have to work 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 or 7 days a week for a period of time in your life. I worked from about 6-ish in the morning to about 10-ish at night, 6 days a week for 4 years. And that's what it took me to go from zero to about $1 million plus net income a year. And I think that not enough people realize that that's probably what it's going to take you, because that's what it takes most people, right, who earn $1 million a year in the sales world. Okay, I mean, unless you're selling, on average, $100 million deals at 1% commission each, right, or more, right, and you have this huge network from Blackstone or something like that, then more likely than not, like the rest of us, you're probably going to have to work 100 hours a week for a 3 or 4 or 5 year period of time. Now, this is not forever, but a period, like a window of your time, is going to be required to be working at least 80 plus hours a week, right? And I'm talking about even if you just did think about how crazy this is. If you work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 5 days a week, all day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, that's 12 hours times 5 days. That's only 60 hours a week. And most people think that's enough to earn $1 million a year. For some of you, it might be. For most of you, it probably won't. So I would recommend that even if you did 12 hours, it's just 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week, okay? You took one day off, take a Saturday or Sunday off. Guys, it's only 72 hours a week. I was working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is 14 hours a day. Let's do the math here, okay? Actually, that's 16 hours a day. I apologize. That's 16 hours, right? 6 a.m., 10, because I was waking up at 3:30 to 4 a.m. in the morning, going to bed at about 11:30 at night, okay? For 4 years straight. I want to talk about the math here. 16 hours a day times 6 days a week, okay, is 96 hours, and most of the time I was working a half day on a Saturday. So I was working basically 100 hours a week every single week for 4 years straight. And that's what it took for me to go from zero in the real estate business to $1 million a year. So I just want to be very freaking clear. Check yourself when it comes to the amount of hours you're actually working. Put a stop clock next to you and actually track the amount of hours you're working, because I promise you, it's actually going to be mind blowing when you actually do the math. Like literally all you need to do is you can literally take your phone, you go on clock, you go to stopwatch and just have it next to you and just click start, and you can, continue adding to it, right? Because you can pause it, right? And you click start and you stop it every single time you're not working. And then you'll stop it and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to continue. So I'm going to start again and I'm going to keep going. And then I'm going to stop it if I take a break, and then I'm going to hit start again when I'm working again. And I want you to do this every single day for an entire week. Maybe try it for a month. I dare you, because some of you are lying to yourselves, for lack of a better word, okay, for actually how much work you're actually putting in, because I know for certain most people aren't putting in the right amount of hours. So recommend you're at least something in the vicinity of 60 to 80 hours a week for a 3 or 4 year period of time. If you truly want to see a next level version of yourself, it will blow your mind what you're capable of achieving if you actually are willing to put in the hours and make it productive work. Number 2 is when it comes to prospecting, because a lot of people just get this wrong. And I've tried to repeat myself 100 times on this, but I feel like still to this day, people are like, I make 300 calls a day and I didn't get anything. Which, by the way, I want to shout out, a few of the people who have been, dropping, some wins in the chat and, and really, doing the scary work, which is the tracking the metrics, because a lot of people just are afraid of it. It's like staring at your bank account every single day, even though it doesn't look the way you want it to. When you actually look at the numbers, and you go, hey, I made 300 and someone calls today. I generated no leads. And then you do that again, you generated no leads. And then again, you generated no leads. And then again, and then you generated one lead. And then all of a sudden you generated another lead. And then the next day was one lead. And then the next day was two leads. And the next day was one lead. And then all of a sudden you have a law of averages will take place where you get better on the phone. Right. So during that 4-year period of time when I was working endless hours, I was making roughly 50 to 100 conversations a day. I literally would have a Post-it. Just shockingly don't have any here because I'm in my new office and I don't have my Post-its with me. Kind of upsetting. But on my Post-it, I would just do a tally every time I had a conversation. And I was like, I'm having 100 conversations today, and that's it. There was not an amount of calls I had to make. There wasn't an amount of, I didn't care what the time was. I just said, I need to have 100 conversations today. And when I did, on average, I was generating 5 to 15 leads a day. So if you're wondering where, the next level version of you is, it's when you're working 12 to 10, 12, 16 hours a day and you prospect for half of that, right? You're going to generate more leads. And when you do that over a longer period of time, it's going to be very, very difficult to not make more money. So stop setting call goals. I don't care no one cares how many calls you make. It's like you want to figure out the actual thing you want, right? Because everybody wants more money, but then nobody looks at the other indicators that lead to money. They just go, one of the indicators is how many calls you make, but that's the top of the funnel indicator, right? It's like, how many views do you get on a YouTube video? Who cares how many views you get? It's not about how many, again, to me, it's not about how many views, it's how many people do you have reaching out to you, right? Is actually the most important metric. So it's like, it's not about likes. It's not about, how many people even comment. So it's like, so you want to look at the actual leading metric to money. So in this instance, how many conversations a day are you having? Set a new benchmark, not about how many calls, but try to have 50 conversations minimum a day. And I would even urge you, I was doing 100 conversations a day, somewhere between 3 and 4 days a week, a couple times a week, because it was a lot. But try it out and see how long it takes you. I implore you to give it a shot, because there are many of you who are having 5 or 10 or 15 conversations a day and you think you're working hard, and you haven't even scratched the surface of what your potential is. Because for those of you who have told me that you want to earn $500,000 or $1 million a year, those people, I see it in real time. The odds, like the amount of you that are making having less than 20 conversations a day is shocking, right? So have 50 minimum conversations a day. And I would even urge you that it doesn't stop there, right? Because it's like, I'm just telling you that if you have 50 conversations a day and you generate no leads, I'd be mind blown. But it's just shoot for more of what you're doing, right? Because my goal for all of you is 2 seller leads every single day. And guess what? If you do that in 30 minutes, kudos to you, and you can stop working and you can go do whatever the heck you want. And you did it, right? You did what you were supposed to do. But for those of you who are generating 0 leads, stop stopping the prospecting time. Continue on. I don't care if you have other things to do. Great. Treat this like the most important thing in the world. It's like you didn't even clock in for work if you didn't get a lead yet. So make sure the minimum metrics is 50 minimum conversations a day and 2 seller leads a day. Just push yourself to new limits you never thought were possible, right? I think you will absolutely be mind blown with what you actually receive when you put in the level of effort you knew you were actually possible of achieving, right? What you're actually capable of will be mind-blowing. The next part is generating more leads. Now, a lot of people think that obviously one metric is make more calls, have more conversations, you'll generate more leads. But how many of you are actually role-playing and your prospecting calls, right? How many of you are actually calling up a colleague, right? And working with somebody else, whether it's in the community or not, right? And actually role-playing conversations and enhancing your skill set. Because making more calls and having more conversations is an absolute direct correlation, but so is role-playing and practicing your objection handling, right? And getting better at the conversation. Because if me and Michael Jordan, and a lot of people saw this, right? If me and Michael Jordan were just putting up free throws, right? And you gave me 500 shots and you gave Michael 5, I'm going to shoot. I'm obviously going to score more points than him, okay? But if you then gave I don't know who the best free throw shooter in the game is, but if you gave him 500 shots and Michael Jordan 5, okay, that guy's gonna I probably would score, let's say 1 out of every 5 shots. Okay, if you give me 500, I'm probably gonna shoot maybe 1. I may have a 20%, and I'll shoot 100 baskets. But if you give it to someone who has an 80+% rate, that person is gonna score 400 points. Michael Jordan can score 5. I might score maybe 100, maybe 200 if I'm lucky. Right? And then if you give it to the best player possible, that person might score 400 or 450 baskets. So it's not just about like, sure, I'm saying do, like, one thing is that that is in our control is do more, right? Which all of us should be doing. That's a non-negotiable. But one thing we should also be doing is enhancing our skill sets to a point where it's not just about the doing, it's about the being on the call. Because if you put me, imagine having me on every single one of your sales calls. Just by a show of hands, how many of you do you think that I would actually convert at a higher rate than you would? By a show of hands. Great. Most of you would, because I'm better on the phones than most of you. That's fine, because I've just made more calls than you and I've had more practice, and I've been practicing for a decade, which makes sense, right? So just like in the example I just shared with you, I want you to put yourself in the shoes where it doesn't matter if it was me on the phone, we would close the same amount of business. So we would generate the same amount of leads. And you're saying, like, how can I get better? Well, role play with a partner. Practice your objection handling. Read the scripts 2 or 3 times before you even get on the phone. Like, when you do that, right, and you record yourself, I would recommend you just go on Zoom, just, and record yourself. Okay. And then listen to the game tape. Okay. Listen to yourself. How do you sound? And then you listen to it and you're like, I can't believe I sound like that. Guys, like, a lot of you watch my content, right? What's funny though is that for you guys, it's content. For me, it's game tape. I get to watch myself. Like, and I have thousands of videos of watching me make calls. And I get to hear myself on these calls and go, I didn't like how I said that. I can change it this way. Oh, I didn't like how I said this. I can change this, right? Like, or, that worked really well. Let me do that again. Practicing, and work with a call every single day. You should do a 5 or 10 minute call. It doesn't have to be long. And just start at where your objection is. Read your scripts 100 times. I would even highly recommend that you get a standing desk and you get a pad below you, because it really helps when it comes with your energy. Because now, like, I've been doing this so long that I can literally sit and I can lay down on my couch, okay, on my back. I can have my eyes closed and I can literally have a conversation as if I'm standing in a powerful position. Okay, because I have practiced that so much. I know exactly how I need to sound, because energy is transferable as well. People buy energy. People don't buy, product or or services. People buy energy. People buy people. So let's go to the next part here, which is making more offers. So many of us, you might be doing really well at the prospecting side. You're generating a great amount of opportunities. And where a lot of people fall short is generating more offers. So this is specifically around, you've gotten a lead now, and you need to put an offer in front of the seller. And there's going to be a couple extra pieces to this, because I feel like there's some of you who are even doing that. Okay, you're doing some starter offers. So for those of you who aren't even doing starter offers, the entire intention of a starter offer is just to condense time frames when it comes to the speed of the negotiating process. Because what most people do, they'll make a call, generate a lead, and then they're going to try to pitch a listing. Again, in most instances, take some time, got to set an appointment. You're going to go to the property, you're going to go shake their hand, you're going to do your presentation, they're going to say yes or no, or maybe you need to follow up, and maybe then you need to do another meeting with their next partner, and then all of a sudden it's a week or 2 later, and then you possibly finally get the listing. And then once you get the listing, you have to go through probably another couple of days of taking pictures and taking videos, and then maybe another couple of days of putting it on the market and making sure that everything looks perfect and confirming with the seller that everything's good, he's happy with the way it looks, and you put up the sign and everything's nice, right? And then you got to start up your tours, and then you start coordinating these tours, and you get calls all the time about coordinating these tours, and you keep doing. Now we're weeks into the process here, and you still haven't even given this guy an offer, like a month into this, right? Maybe more, maybe a little less. And you still haven't even given an offer yet. And then you do all these tours, and then through the tours, you're hoping to get an offer, and then a couple of these guys are like, look, it's just not for me. What do you mean it's not for you? You just maybe drive 2 hours to go and tour the property, sit here and, and answer all your questions. You just say it's not for you? What do you mean it's not for you? Can you at least give me an offer? And you're in this weird position for possibly even another few weeks or a few months. And then eventually you finally get an offer, and the number is at, 20% off of what you listed it for. And you're like, what the heck's going on? This is exactly why what we do is that we make starter offers within the first 24 hours of getting a lead, because I'm not waiting 2 to 3 months to get a gauge of where the seller's at. Okay, I want it ASAP. So we make starter offers. And then based off of the starter offers, we get a counter. The whole purpose of these starter offers is to get a counter. I just want some response, some feedback. How motivated is the seller? Okay. Now, many of you might even be making starter offers because, you've been watching my stuff. We've worked together, right? Like you're there. Now the question is, what do you do next? Because there's a lot of people who are in this weird space that they've made a starter offer. The seller got back to them and said, like, hey, let's say you make an offer on a property. Seller says to you that they wanted $10 million. You offer $5 million. Okay. Numbers are irrelevant here. And then he comes back to you and says, look, the best number I can do is 9 million. And you're like, okay, no problem. And then you just don't do anything with it, right? Like you just have this lead for $9 million. You're like, I'm not doing, you're not doing anything with it. Now that entire process doesn't stop there, right? Now you go into the next phase of offers, which is pitching this deal out at a price in which you can get compensated. And then trying to get offers not only from yourself, which you've just done with the starter offer, but from other people. We'll talk about other pieces of that as well. This boils down to how many buyers do you have in your database? How do you go find more buyers? We've talked about this 100 times about reverse looking up properties through Reonomy, the properties that have traded in the last 12 months within a certain vicinity of the property, certain asset class types, and properties that are very similar. And you can give them all a call and say, hey, I have this property that's off market and they want to sell it and they're going to be looking to put it on the market soon. And they wanted to go on you first to give you a first look at the property before we put it on the market. Is this something you'd be open to taking a look at? Yes. So everybody says yes, of course. And how many times are you doing that? How many times are you putting a deal in front of a buyer? And the important piece here is how many true offers are you getting on a regular basis? Because you should be generating 2 solid leads a day and 1 true offer a day. And if you did that every single day, it would be really hard for you to not do at least 1 deal a month. And there's a lot of people who are like scratching their head, right? They're like, I just don't know why I'm not selling more real estate. Well, it's because you generated like 4 leads since the beginning of this year and you've generated no true offers. So obviously you're not going to sell any real estate. You're just not going to do any commercial real estate sales. You're just not. But if you came to me and said, hey, I've been generating 2 solid leads a day, every single day since the beginning of this year, and I've been generating at least 1 true offer every single day since the beginning of this year, I would say it would be damn near impossible for you not to have at least 1 deal under contract, for God's sakes. It would be pretty freaking hard, almost impossible. I haven't seen it yet. It'd be really freaking difficult. So we're doing the starter offers. You're getting that counter, getting feedback ASAP. Then you go into the next phase, which is true offers. And you should be pitching this deal every single day, as many times as it takes until you get at least 2 to 5 true offers on a property. And if every single one of those true offers are off of the price that the seller wants by something like 20 or 30%, then guess what? The price is off, clearly, okay? It's hard to get 5 true offers on a property and all of them be wrong. If you got 1, they could be wrong, right? You could be pitching a multifamily property to a retail guy and he goes, yeah, I only think it's worth $2 million. It could easily be worth 3 or 4, right? Sometimes happens. You pitch it to 5 people, you get 5 true offers, or you're pitching it to 20 people and you get 5 true offers. It's hard that all 5 of them are completely off. Okay, you're going to get some type of ballpark range. That's the value of the property. If the seller's not willing to agree, then you obviously can try to incorporate some creative financing structures. They're open to seller financing, wonderful assumptions of loans, other things, right? JVs, you may be able to work the deal. But if you go that entire process, it's just the price if you still can't get the deal closed. And then it's about working with the seller to understand, like, hey, I've gotten you 5 offers of all the local investors in the market. That whether you list the property now, right, or you choose not to, this is where you're going to sell for, because these are the 5 people who are probably going to buy your property, whether it's on the market or not. You told me at the very beginning that you're looking to sell the property because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Is that still something you're looking to do? Are you serious about selling your property? Because if you are, then this is going to be the best price you get. If you're not interested in selling, I completely respect that. But if you're interested in selling, this is where we need to be. And here's the facts. Number 5 is prospecting higher price points. Because a lot of people here, a lot of us, I'm not telling you, by the way, call $100 million deals, okay? I'm saying don't avoid $100 million deals. I'm saying that could be added and you do, a little bit of that as well. I'm saying increase your average price point, okay? Whether you're doing residential sales, you're doing leasing, you're doing commercial real estate investment, sales, right? I don't care what you're selling, but you should be selling and targeting properties that are at least 1.5 to 5x the average sales price you're targeting right now. Because if you ever want to get out of the mundane BS work that you have right now, which you have to sell a gajillion properties to make any reasonable amount of money, you must increase your average sales price. The only other way to do that is to learn how to wholesale. You must learn how to wholesale, which we'll talk about later. But there's really a very few other ways to make a ton of extra money on every single deal if you're not prospecting higher price points. Because if you're only going to make 4, 5, or 6% commission as a broker selling it off market, it's going to be very, very freaking difficult if you're trying to sell $500,000 properties, right? Because even if you're maxing them out at 6%, I mean, I've heard people getting 10% commissions, right? Even if you're only getting 10%, it's only $50K. You'd have to do one of those a month to make some serious cash. So, or more, obviously. So expand your higher price point. So that means expanding your location. That means expanding your, the geographic location of what you're prospecting. Stop just prospecting in your one town. Start going county-wide, tri-county, the entire state, the entire country. Start prospecting where your buyers are taking you. You don't just prospect a prospect, but you prospect where your buyers are taking you. If you have a guy who's been vetted, has the money, and has bought 5 properties in the last 12 months and wants to buy another 5 properties over the next 12 months, you probably should start prospecting for properties for that individual. doesn't have to be that complicated, right? In the residential world, we just make it out to be this really simplistic thing of like, of course, I'm going to prospect for this buyer. Of course. But a lot of us in the commercial world, we think it's like this weird taboo thing to prospect for a guy who's out, like maybe looking in a marketplace that we don't really prospect for, right? But it's like, okay, if someone wants a house, and you're prospecting in any given area, right? Or a house comes in all the way, 3 hours away from you in the same state, but it matches exactly what they're looking for. You're probably going to drive 3 hours. But in commercial, like, I don't know if I want to do that, right? Prospect wherever the heck the freaking buyer who's vetted and ready to buy something is taking you. Now, I'm not saying that you should be prospecting, go from multifamily to hotels. But if you randomly get on the phone with or happen to meet some guy for coffee, and he's like, hey, like, I, run, 70 Marriott hotels or Hilton hotels, and I'm looking to buy 5 more in the next 12 months. And I want you to be my guy for the entire state of Texas. Then I probably would start prospecting hotels like your life depends on it, or at least spend 2 days a week, right? And then the other 3 days a week, continue to do multifamily, like spend some time. Like, you don't have to do every single day, of course, that would be kind of silly, but you start at least spending a little bit of time. So it's like prospect where the money is, right? Go to higher price points, right? Stop prospecting properties that are sub $1 million. I don't care if you're in the middle of Kentucky. There are parts of every state that have higher price points. Stop prospecting the little toony baby 2,000 square foot property that's trading for $300,000. You're going to hate the business, because you're going to collect a check at the end of it, even if it's 6% commission. And it's like, whoop-de-doo, you made $25,000, right? Like, how many months of your monthly nut are you actually paying for, right? Like, we want to collect 6-figure checks every single time we close a deal. That's our intention with my organization, right? Like, no, I want a 6-figure check every time. So it's like, because that way it's like, I'm putting myself really far ahead. I can start buying real estate, right? That's the whole purpose of why we're in this industry. Prospect higher price.